Hey, BassGeek here, and I'm going to give you my top 5 summertime lures. So I'm going to give you my top 5, and we're going to start with number 5 on the list, and we'll work up to what I feel like is my personal best summertime bait, what I seem to catch most of my fish on throughout the summertime. And so we're going to start with number 5, and number 5 is the Strike King 10XD. Now where I fish at, it's extremely deep. This dives 25 plus feet. Now I'm a little crazy, but you know, a lot of times I'm fishing in 30 and 40 foot of water. And a lot of guys will put, you know, will use 12. I've even heard some guys using 14 and 15. I use 10, and sometimes when I need to get it real deep, I'll use 8-pound test. Now this is a Shimano Clarius. Don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, but I'll put a link to it in the bottom. This is a light action, fast tip rod. And you can see, I mean, this rod has a lot of bend to it. So I can really whip it out there, get it a long distance. It's 7'10", and I couple that with an Abu Garcia Aura winch. Always 5'1" to 5'4" to 1. You know, I know some guys I've seen talk about fishing in the 6, but shoo, those things will wear you out all day throwing that, to me, on a 6 gear ratio reel. You'll notice it's got the long butt so you can get a nice long cast. I've had this rod for a number of years, and it's really time to upgrade it. It's been a great rod, but I'm ready for something that's got a little more sensitivity to it. And that's number 5. All right, so number 4 is the giant spoon. I actually love to throw a giant spoon, but because I fish a lot of clear water, heavy metal is a little spooky to clear water fish. Now, when they're really, really active, they'll get on this. But most of the time, I'm throwing this in places like Douglas Reservoir, Cherokee, and I do throw smaller spoons. My favorite spoon to actually throw on this lake, this is the Nichols Ben Parker, but my favorite spoon to throw in clear water are the smaller, I think they're 5 or 6 inch sexy spoons from Strike King. This is probably my favorite overall. Really like this. And again, one of my buddies, if you see my Limit series, one of my travel buddies, I don't think he was throwing the Nichols, but you know, a big spoon around bridge pilings, and in 3 fish he had, I think it was over 12 pounds, and it may have even been more than that. So these things can produce big bass. Now I couple this is actually my Alabama rig rod, and so this is a Veritas. And remember, you know, I love the standard guide Veritas, guys. It's the micro guides that I have so much problems with the ceramics. And believe it or not, even this rod, the tip broke. So I've kind of rigged it up, and the tip is a lot shorter than it was, but it still works great. I've caught a lot of fish on this rod. It's great. And again, I couple that with an Aura winch. Now, on my Alabama rig rod, I do use a 5'1", so a slow reel. I would recommend a little faster, probably a 7, maybe the mid-6s really, for the big spoon. So you can catch up, take line, because this is a lot of metal for them to be thrashing around. You're probably going to end up losing a fish, but you know, right now it's what I got. It's what I use. Number 3, the Bucktail Jig, the Preacher Jig, or a Big Hair Jig, whatever you want to call it. That's number 3 for me. Now, a lot of times, if the bass are spooky, I'll put a fluke on it, some sort of soft jerk bait with a straight tail. Sometimes I won't put anything on it. And when they're a little more active, I like to put like a Kitech, a small swim bait on it. My favorite size is a 1 ounce. It's a very subtle bait that I use sometimes when the bass are just short striking. My number 1 favorite summertime lure, we'll get to that. But I generally, because I'm using an ounce, I put it on a heavy action. This is a 7-foot heavy action. Again, I want a long cast, so I'll put it on a 7 to a 7 to 3 heavy action. And this reel is a 7/0 to 1. Now, I like probably the 6'3" range. I don't like to reel this too fast, but because you don't fish it like a normal jig. I did a how to fish a hair jig video. You can go check that out. I'll put it in the links here somewhere. I did one last year. Tell me if you want me to update it, I'll update it. But a hair jig is a very subtle lure, so that when the bite is maybe just not quite right, you can throw that out there and get them going. Number 3, the hair jig. Now, any of you that know me are probably going to be able to guess my top 2. Number 2, the jig. Now, I'll fish 2 different jigs. So I'm just going to say the jig in general. And I'll fish 2 different styles of jig during the summer. One is, of course, my favorite, an Arky head jig. And what I like to do with it is I like to flip with it, or I like to stroke that jig. And what that means is you cast it out, and I'll use a heavier jig. My favorite 2 sizes, you know, is a 3/8 and a 1/2 ounce, probably my favorite. But when I'm stroking, when I'm fishing deep, generally I'm going to use that 3/4 ounce. That's a good all-around go-to size. Now, the other jig is a football head jig. Now, a football head jig, generally I'm going to throw it on the bottom and I'm just going to drag it along. You know, during the summer, later in the year, when the fish get a little when the temperatures really get up and the fish, the bite really slows down, a football head is great. And stroking a jig really gets good. But what I do, stroking a jig, I'll throw it out there, let it sink to the bottom. Sometimes I'll drag it just a little, and then I'll just rip it off the bottom. I'll follow it back down. You know, I want it semi-slack line. I'm following that line back down. I might drag it again a little bit, or I might just rip it again. Sometimes you can double pump it. I know there's a lot of innuendo in this conversation. But anyway, so, you know, some of my favorite colors is the, this is a jig that was tied specially for me by Smoky Mountain Jigs or Smoky Mountain Lures. I'm sorry if I got that wrong. But it is a black, brown, amber. And, you know, on Lake P, I caught a 5-pound, 10-ounce largemouth on this jig right here. So I'll put a picture of that up now. But it was a good largemouth for this lake. Again, super clear water. This jig works on a lot of different water. But like I said, so the jig is number 2, and we're going to couple the Arky and the football head jig for the summertime. I know you guys will never guess what number 1 is. You'll never guess in a million years. Is it a swim bait? No, it's not. I'm lying. It is a swim bait. So a swim bait is, of course, my number 1. And, you know, I love the big swim baits, the big hard swim baits. But again, I fish in mountain reservoirs. So the big soft bodies coupled with the ledge heads, and this is a Major League Lures Boom Shad, one of my very favorites, and it's in ghost shad color. Great bait for clear water. And the reason I like the soft plastics is because they're versatile. They're very, very versatile. I don't have to buy $5, $50, $60, $120 baits to cover all the depths. I buy that one, and I buy me 4 or 5 different sizes of ledge head. And so now I can fish it at whatever depth level I want to fish it at. You fish dirty water, Boom Shad Major League Lures has some of the best dirty water colors you will find on a swim bait. The best swim bait colors, hand painted, you'll ever find. MajorLeagueLures.com. All right, so that is my top 5. You guys, as always, in the comment section below, tell me what your top 5 summer baits are. You guys know I'm a structure guy, I'm a deep water guy, I live for it, love it. Just nothing better when you can see them on the graph, back off of them, throw at them, and put them in the boat. Just nothing better. I mean, why would you beat the banks guessing where they're at when you know they're there? So the other thing, if you got any questions about that, let me know. I can do a video on that, a little more in-depth video on what I look for as far as areas that I'm looking for and situations that I'm looking for. But let me know what your top 5 are. Give them to me in order. Like I always say, you know, I love to talk to you guys about fishing. I mean, I really do love to talk about fishing all the time, every day. It's why I do this. And, you know, like it if you like it. And don't forget to subscribe. You guys are awesome.